did this ourselves.
They're coming. It can't be.
Where is everyone?
Hello, survivors, and welcome back to the Apocalypse Postcast, a podcast. I'm your host, Makeshift, and today we're going to be talking to a puppet maker and prop designer who's worked on Doctor Who and Torchwood, also the man behind the post-apocalyptic styling of Salvaged Wear, and finally we're going to talk to a LARP creature designer responsible for some of the most intense costumes I've ever seen. Luckily for me, they're all the same person. Welcome to the show, the UK's Mark Cordory.
Oh, hi, Mike. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks so much for coming on. I'm really excited to get to talk to you.
No, likewise. This is great. It's another human being to talk to.
Yeah. Yeah, because you guys are still in like full lockdown. I know here in Tennessee that we've got a looser version of quarantine, but you guys are still in stage 1, right?
Oh, I mean, yeah, it's not quite zombie apocalypse yet, but it feels like it. Yeah, I haven't been outside the house for what feels like half my life now.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, we still get to go shopping here, and restaurants are open for takeout, so we do a lot of that. They're also open for dining in limited capacity,
Wow.
But we try to avoid that one.
Yeah, well, there's nothing like that open. What I'm missing most is the pubs. Haven't been down to a pub for close to a year now.
I bet.
That's really starting to tell.
No, oh my gosh, yeah. I think that that's where we find so much social interaction in the real world is just being able to go out and hang out with strangers and have a drink, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the real simple basics that you realize when you can't do that. At the end of a working week, you go, yeah, Friday night, just go down to the local pub, meet a few mates, have a couple of drinks, and just let off some steam. And not being able to do that for weeks, months on end is just like, whoa, okay, that really was an important little valve to let off some pressure. So, yeah, I'm missing that.
Yeah, you didn't realize how important just getting out of the house was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about your career, and we're gonna slowly make our way back to the apocalypse. But I want to start with, you've got 37 years of prop making. How'd you get started in that?
Oh, God. Well, I guess basically as a kid, the only thing I was really any good at was making stuff and colouring in. I mean, what I do now is just glorified colouring in, basically, in 3D. So I've always made things. I've always been artistically inclined at school. The only thing I was really any good at, the only thing I got good grades in was art. And it's kind of something which is kind of me. I've never really been any good at anything else, I think, is the reason why I ended up doing what I'm doing now.
So it was a true calling.
Yeah. I mean, you could call it that. That sounds much better than I was crap at everything else.
And what was your first professional job? Do you remember?
My first professional job. Tricky, because when I left college, when I'd finished my degree, I started up my own company running a LARP. But whether you could call that a real job, I don't know. I guess my proper employment came when I moved to Cardiff, where there was quite a reasonable TV production, nothing on the scale that it is these days. But I was employed by a friend who was a few years above me in college, and he had a props making company over there called Talisman, and he employed me as one of his main people. I did a lot of the sculpting and design work for the various commissions that he got. So yeah, that would be my first, working for my friend who sadly now passed. He passed away last year, Bill Talbot. So a shout out to him.
Yeah. Wild. And you eventually worked on some incredible shows like Doctor Who and its spin-off Torchwood. I'm a big fan, by the way.
Oh, cool.
and they both had they would both routinely kind of go through these apocalyptic and steampunk imagery. I mean, with Doctor Who, it was like almost every episode, some world was going through its own apocalypse, right?
it's kind of Doctor Who mainstream of, hey, something's going to end really badly.
Yeah. And like, how would you explain? Well, first off, can you explain what you did on those shows and describe the art style that you were going for, or that the team was going for?
Well, I was head of props fabrication, so my very, very small department was responsible for all the hand props, a lot of the set dressing on the spaceships and stuff, or the TARDIS. And that was during the Christopher Eccleston and the first season and a half of David Tennant.
Oh, great.
As far as the approach goes, I mean, I was part of the art department, so I was working to most of the time to designs which were handed down to me, especially. They had some very, very good concept artists. One of them, who I'll name check, is Matt Savage, who has since gone on to work on Star Wars, has done a lot of the Star Wars stuff and big major Hollywood films. And he was one of the core concept artists. And the way it would work is that the art department would come up with these concepts. Those would then be passed down the line to us. We would look at them and go, we've got no budget. And as it turns out, no time to make this. So we would do our best to interpret those designs,
Yeah.
which is not, I guess from the art department's position, is not the ideal, because a concept artist would very much like to have their whole concept realized. But we were very much in the position that we have no facilities, we have very little budget, and we have very little time, because everything was just rolling, constant deadlines.
Yeah.
So we just did our best to interpret things, and basically that came down to finding lots of random pieces, skip hunting, car boot sales, going down the local hardware shop, finding shapes and putting them together, trying to approximate what had come down from the art department. And that's literally how we worked. I think it's better now, but I mean, this is many years since, and the production was kind of a kick-ass scramble at the beginning. So, yeah, I'm proud of what we did, but it was very much an approximation of what was handed down to us that we managed to achieve.
Gotcha. Yeah, it seemed like during the Matt Smith years is when the budget kind of started ballooning a little bit. You could kind of see a difference in production value. What do you think it would have been a different situation for you if you were on the show during those higher budgets?
Oh, I think so, yes. I mean, strangely, though, I think it might have been less satisfying, because we would have had to adhere much more closely to the designs that were handed down to us.
Gotcha.
The budget and deadline issues that we had kind of meant that I was allowed to add my own input into things. And there were points where we didn't actually have a design. There was just a description in the script, but there was no time for the art department to produce anything for me to work from. So I literally just went from the script and went, okay, I'll interpret this in my own way. So in a way, I was benefited by the situation that we had, by the restrictions that we had, because perversely it gave me a bit more freedom to add my own slant to things.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I'm a video producer by trade, and I mean, it's a lot of fun when you get on a project that has a full budget, but I really enjoy when I'm working with a smaller budget and I have to figure out, all right, how are we going to do this with less crew? How are we going to pull this off? How are we going to steal a location? All that stuff.
Yeah.
And, like, can I light this with only the 3 or 4 lights I've got in my kit versus rentals? And it is really satisfying when you pull it off and you're like, wow, that looks like a bigger budget than it was.
Yeah, I agree. It's
awesome.
It's that I can't think of a phrase for it. It's adversity gives you the opportunity to just pull a bit of magic out of the hat. Whereas if you had all the budget and all the time in the world, you can kind of get a little bit lazy. But if you're constantly having to be inventive, be problem solving all the time, then I think, yeah, your creative juices can flow a little bit more freely, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. I think it's really great. Anytime you can add limitations to yourself, because that's what like improv comedy is all about. Is the comedy doesn't come from great writing, because improv is never great writing,
No.
but it comes from watching actors struggle with different sets of rules and have to make it work.
Yeah. No,
It is.
I agree. I think that adversity does give you, you've got to think of it up in the moment, and you've got to problem solve in the moment. You don't have a massive department and a massive budget and all the facilities you could ever want behind you. You have to be creative.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on Doctor Who, because I know that those early seasons paved the way for it's been continuing ever since. It just keeps going.
It does.
And that's no small feat.
Yeah, I whether I would want to work on it now, I suspect probably not. But it felt like a real privilege to be able to work on it when it first came back, because
That's great.
I was born in the 60s, so I grew up watching 60s and 70s British TV, and Doctor Who Saturday night was a mainstay of my viewing, because I loved all the sci-fi and the monsters and all of this. So, I grew up on Doctor Who, on the early episodes. So when I heard it was coming back and it was going to be produced in Cardiff, where I was working, I thought, there's no way this is going to happen without me. I was literally that determined. It's like, right, fuck it, this is going to happen, and I'm going to be on it. So I just fortunately knew, other contacts. So I threw out a lot of inquiries, found out who was in charge of the art department, and sort of just basically stormed in and went, give us a job.
Awesome.
So yeah,
that's one way to do it.
Well, it was great because, going back to that whole, nobody really knew what they were doing, so we were all just winging it, and I kind of really got a buzz out of doing that. I wouldn't want to keep on doing it. After a while, I got wearing, and I went,
of course,
this is enough. But yeah, it was good. It felt like a privilege, and it felt like my 10-year-old childhood self would be bouncing up and down like he was on 10 shots of caffeine with excitement at the idea that his old self would be actually working on it.
Yeah, so true. Awesome. Did you have a favorite episode of Doctor Who, whether it's the seasons you worked on or not?
Yeah, I think the one I enjoyed working on the most was a two-parter. Christopher Eccleston was The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances, that two-parter set in World War II. There was just something about working on that. We had some nice props to make. It was a nice setting, and I think it was a good story. So I think out of all of them, that's probably the story that I'm most proud to have worked on.
Awesome. Yeah, I remember those episodes. They were beautiful.
Yeah, they had classic creepy Doctor Who, because Doctor Who was, when it was at its best, it was creepy. There's the whole thing you watch it from behind the sofa. Yeah, that's the old adage of watching Doctor Who back in the 60s and 70s. And that had some of that element of it's genuinely creepy. So yeah, I thought it was a good one.
Oh, wow. Awesome. You're also a puppet and creature maker, but your puppets are not something you'd ever see on Sesame Street. They kind of have that same creepy vibe. How'd you get into making puppets, and how would you describe your art style when you're building puppets?
The style really depends on what the commission or the brief was. But I think the style I enjoy working most in is the one that was really inspired by things like The Dark Crystal and Labyrinth, which was Brian Froud's designs, which I think just translated so beautifully to puppetry. I'm very, very sword and sorcery, fantasy, elves and fairies and goblins thing. But those are the ones that I've enjoyed making the most. And I've made, probably made about 70, 80 puppets over the years for various productions. But most of them tend to be sort of fantasy-esque, a few animals shoved in there. So yeah, I haven't actually made puppets for quite a while, although I did make a post-apocalyptic ventriloquist doll last year,
Awesome.
just because lockdown was getting boring and I didn't have any work on. I thought, right, okay, fuck it, I'm going to make this. So I did.
Yeah, that's great.
So it's just hanging by a string in the corner of my workshop at the moment. I don't know what to do with it.
Oh man, do you have? I don't think I've seen this. Is it on your website?
No, actually, I don't think it's on my website. I don't think I've even taken any proper photographs of it. I posted a video of it some time ago on Facebook and Instagram.
Okay.
No, that's very remiss of me. I should take some photographs or maybe do an official little video of it. It's just a creepy doll made into a ventriloquist doll. And
that'd be great. I'd love to see it. And so now when you're doing your puppets, and you guys should all go to markcordory.com. I'll link it below in the episode notes, but these puppets are not like sock puppets. They're very elaborate. When you're building them, you've got to be thinking about like the mechanics of actually using them. How much more goes into a puppet than like a typical prop?
Well, I mean, like you say, you've got to figure out how it's going to be puppeteered. So, I mean, generally they will mostly be hand puppeteered in the same way you think of Kermit, that you've got your hand in the head operating the mouth and the gross head movements. But things like you're probably thinking mostly about the Goblin Pirate that's on the front page of my website. It's kind of my sort of online avatar these days.
Yeah.
But he's got blink mechanism and frown and hand movements, which are all cable controlled. And you have to think right at the start from the design, like, okay, where am I going to put the wrinkles in? What will assist the movement on this? How wide does the mouth have to be that I'm not really pulling against the foam or whatever materials I'm making it out of? So that there's a lot you have to think right back to the beginning, how you're going to solve the problems 5, 6, 10 steps down the line. So you have to plan ahead for a puppet far more than I think an average prop. You just go, this kind of makes itself really. But yeah, whenever there's mechanisms involved and when there's puppeteering involved, then there's a lot of considerations. Weight is a major issue, and every ounce counts when you're making a puppet that you, especially if it's one that you're operating from below in classic. I'm actually doing the hand movements here, although that's bugger all use on a podcast. But when you're working from below, as you would be with Miss Piggy or Kermit or your classic Muppet, every single ounce is on your arm and on your hand. So you have to think, okay, I'm gotta try and cut the weight down on every single aspect of this build. So yeah, they're an interesting challenge, and you don't always get it right. I mean, if you're stuck beneath the table staring at a monitor for 3 hours, you feel every pound on your arm is like, oh God, this really, really hurts. So puppeteers really work for their money.
Yeah, no kidding. Anytime you're working over your head, it can get draining really fast. So I hadn't really thought about the weight issue with some of these puppets.
Well, yeah,
that's pretty wild.
It's not just Dolly Waggling.
I love when you bring out these incredibly British sayings. I have no idea what a dolly wagging is.
Well, Dolly Waggling was the disparaging description of puppeteering. It's like that most of the puppeteers would call it, oh, I'm just dolly waggling, so waggling a dolly around. So yeah, it's self-depreciation.
Got it. Okay. And then so not only hand puppets, but you also make full body puppets, more or less creature costumes. And a lot of them you've made for LARPing and LARPers, which is so much like these costumes are so far above and beyond what I typically expect for a LARP.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think it was the creature costumes, the potential of the creature costumes that really got me into LARP initially, and then I discovered all the rest of what it's capable of doing as a form of entertainment. But yeah, right from the start, I wanted to try and make LARP feel like you were on a movie set or in a reasonably budget TV, even though most of them ended up like Doctor Who style budget monsters. But yeah, there's something quite magical about presenting a full body monster costume to unsuspecting players for the first time, and they go, I was just about to swear really badly then, so I won't. But they're seeing their reaction from a surprising full body monster costume is really quite satisfying. The last one I did was kind of inspired by Ray Harryhausen, Jason and the Argonauts, Talos. It was meant to be a 4-armed bronze statue, animated statue, 7 foot tall, and I managed to get 4 arms working on a costume. It's just a guy inside an EVA foam and latex costume. But seeing that within a game environment, rather than just somebody with a cheap shop bought mask on their head, for me, it's kind of. It's like being able to work on a low-budget film, but you don't have to worry about somebody else's commission because you're doing it for yourself. You're writing the script, you're putting in the monsters and the props and all of that. Yeah, I do enjoy LARP. I mean, it's daft, but when it works really well, it's a remarkably effective storytelling and entertainment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting because I've not been involved in LARPing. Of course, I've had a lifetime of like theater and improv, and of course at Wasteland you kind of go in and out of character. But yeah, I'm excited to go to my first LARP. I know that we do a few here, like Nuke Lanta, down in Georgia. So I'm hoping to make my way there at some point. But yeah, so far I haven't gotten into it.
Well, I mean, it's obviously after last year, we don't know when there's going to be any more LARPs in this country, and I'm knocking on a bit now, so I don't know how many more LARPs I've got left in me, or when there's ever going to be any more. So I don't know. It'd be nice to do just at least one more.
Mark Corddry's last stand.
I've got a few characters to kill off on various games, so I might as well finish them off.
Now I can see you like leading a band of warriors, like Braveheart style, into your last LARP.
Yeah, I'd like to go down in the blaze of glory.
Oh man. Okay, so with some of these creatures, I know on your website I've seen like a full-size alien, a living corpse that looks straight out of Resident Evil, and I think the most impressive, an incredibly elaborate Cthulhu.
All right.
How long do these take you?
How long did Cthulhu take me? I think Cthulhu took about 6 weeks. I mean, I only charged for like 3 weeks' work, but this is the problem when you get into building something. You go, no, actually, I could make it look like this. Oh, if I put another few days into that, that'll look even better. And pride takes away your business sense, and you just go, sod it, I just want to finish this off to make it look as best as possible. So yeah, Cthulhu was a fun one to make. The weirdest thing about the Cthulhu one was when it turned up on my Facebook feed, and the Stan Winston School every year they do a Halloween competition where people submit their Halloween costumes, and they'd taken my picture of Cthulhu as their poster boy for that year's competition. They'd credited me and everything, and that was great. It's like, oh wow, okay, thank you very much. Stan Winston's school choosing my Cthulhu. He's just a big rubber monster, and it's hardly film quality stuff, but it's perfectly okay for LARP.
Well, it sure photographs well. It looks like it could be practically real.
Well, that's where photographers come in, because no matter how good a costume you make, whatever genre you're working in, you can make something that looks really good, but you get a proper photographer to take really good photographs, and everything just looks so much better. So never underestimate the power of a good photographer.
Yeah, that's a really good point. um, yeah, those are wild. Now, are these all commissions, or do you have like a back room with all these creatures in like standing coffins
Oh God, I
and
wish.
just waiting to be used?
No, most of them are commissions. Virtually all the stuff that I produce is done to commission. It's
Uh-huh.
very rare that I will get the luxury of making something just because I want to make it. Because
Yeah,
this is
especially
my full-time job, so
when.
I have to put aside the personal stuff in favor of the stuff that's actually going to pay me money. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, most of the costumes, the creature costumes, are commissioned. The only one that wasn't really was the Bronze Titan that I was talking about. That was done for a LARP that I was running,
Mm-hmm.
and it was co-funded by a much larger LARP system in the UK. So they put in a chunk of money into its build, and then after we'd used it on the event that I was involved in running, they got to keep it. So
Wow.
that kind of helped. That helped lessen the hurt of spending however many weeks making it for free, which is generally
Yeah.
what you do when you're making stuff for yourself.
Gotcha. Right. Oh, interesting. Yeah, it's wild when you consider like, a lot of these projects wouldn't have happened if someone hadn't come to you and said, I have this idea. Do you think you can do it?
Mm.
So that's pretty fascinating, and it can definitely help you exercise your artistic style when someone says, "Yeah, I want this Cthulhu," or I want,
Well,
you know, s- these weird characters.
with Cthulhu, I almost bullied the system into letting me build Cthulhu for them. It's a system based in the Netherlands
Uh-huh.
called Vortex Adventures, and they'd found a couple of my previous monsters online and put out a call on Facebook saying, "Hey, does anybody know somebody who makes costumes like this?" And the two
Oh,
photographs
funny.
they'd chosen were two of the costumes that I'd made. So
Uh-huh.
somebody flagged me. I got in contact with them, said, "Yeah, they're both mine. What do you want?" And I ended up making, I don't know, probably about 8, 9 costumes over a period of years for them. But
Oh, wow, that's great.
but the Cthulhu one was that they basically said, "What do you really want to make?" I said, "I'd love to make Cthulhu." I went, "Yeah, okay, I'm sure we can use them." So I did.
That's fantastic. Awesome. Oh man. Okay, so I just want to touch one more base into your film career. In 2018, you got to run the whole art department for the release of the UK's Black Flowers, which was retitled uh, out of the country as Atomic Apocalypse. Can you tell me about that project? How you got involved?
Well, I didn't run the whole art department. I was art director for the 2-day shoot, which took place in the UK. So
Oh, okay.
they were doing, most of it was filmed in the States,
Got it.
and they had the main actor. She came over, and I don't know quite what the setup was, but yes, they did 2 days worth of filming in some woodland and some old buildings in the UK. And I had worked previously briefly for the director Martin Gooch,
Mm-hmm.
who contacted me and said, "I've seen you do post-apocalyptic stuff. Uh, are you interested in coming and sort of bringing some of your costumes along and a few people to just do a bit of artwork on 2 days shoot?" So I did, and it was great. It was, yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of running around in damp English woods in the middle of
Uh-huh.
winter, pretending to be in the apocalypse again.
Gotcha. Which scene was that? Because I just watched the movie this week.
I still haven't seen it yet.
Oh, no
It's
kidding.
not. No, it's not been released over here yet.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so no, I haven't seen it. It's the scenes where the characters have been chased through the woods at night by the raiders, the Scum Raiders, I think they're called.
Oh, yep. Uh-huh.
And there's also an interior uh, sort of stronghold where some survivors are holed up, and then the Scum Raiders burst in through the door and mayhem ensues. But I was one of the Scum Raiders. I got a few other friends from LARP who had done some post-apocalyptic LARP as well, and they had
Nice.
some of their own costumes, some costumes that I'd made for them, some spare bits that I had. So we sort of cobbled together about 5 or 6 raiders, enough for that shoot. Yeah, it was mostly the woods at night.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that was great. It was a lot of fun. The movie, it goes to a lot of places. And there's a lot of really cool characters, and it's kind of like it kind of plays out like a Fallout game, because you go to this tribe and they've got this going on. There's this cult of survivors trying to bring a ladder to the top of a mountain so they can get closer to the god just for the heck of it, because they're bored. And then there's another camp where they have a lot of supplies, but they've decided that they're just going to party until the supplies run out, because again, they're bored.
Right, okay.
So it was really fun kind of going to these different, places, and everyone's deciding to run out the apocalypse in a different way.
Oh, I look forward to seeing it, because I only ever saw the segment of script that I was working on, so I don't know what the rest of the story is. But the trailer I've seen looks really good. The computer graphics work on it, sort of, the background enhancement and the ruined cities. Going, yeah, that looks really, really good. So I say, as soon as it's released in the UK, it's definitely on my watch list. But it was fun.
Awesome.
It was good. It was a nice. Again, it's that. It was like the early days of Doctor Who, that there wasn't a massive budget, there wasn't a massive production team. You had to be inventive. You had to make do with the supplies and the environments that you had and make the most of them. So I enjoy working like that.
Yeah, that's great. And it's amazing what you can do in the digital era, where matte painting becomes that much easier, because you can just drop backgrounds in digitally, and cameras and audio equipment has gotten cheaper. So that stuff has made it more accessible. And so now you're just down to, what do your locations cost and what do your people cost? It's pretty wild.
Yeah, I think that the whole digital filming and camera work, it's made it so much more accessible. When I was a kid, my father had a Super 8 cine camera. Yeah. So that's your 8mm film strip with a sound strip down the side of it. And he would make films and they would be edited, but you would get like a 3-minute reel of film, which you would then have to send off to the processors. And you didn't know whether you'd got the scenes that you wanted until you got it back and edited it together. Now everything is digital footage is essentially free.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't work, you record over it, do it again.
Right.
And the only editing costs are really the programs that you're using in your own time. It's not like you're having to farm stuff out to Kodak or whatever to be, to be processed. So right. I think that whole revolution of making it so accessible to just people at home, and anybody who wants to give it a try can. And that's fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. Well, survivors, we're going to get into Mark's post-apocalypse costuming, as well as his trip across the pond to Wasteland Weekend, right after these messages from the Wasteland community.
Do you want to show off the size of your gun? Do you need a compensator to extend the size of your barrel because your gun is too small? Well, come on down to the Gunrunners, where we have the largest guns in the Waste. Everything from RPG Zookas to Mega Flessad rockets. Come check us out inside the Valkyries of the Second Sun camp.
This is Grim Grinner, broadcasting on all channels. Welcome to the Waste is available to listen on Spotify, Anchor FM, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Find out more at linktree.com/welcome to the Wastes. See you in the Wastes.
All right, survivors, we're back with Mark Cordory from the UK, and we just went over a lot of his prop making and filmmaking career, but now we're going to get into, he's got a whole line of post-apocalypse costume pieces, and I mean, these are like top of the line post-apocalypse costume pieces. The brand is called Salvaged. It's right on markcordory.com. So Mark, what drew you into post-apocalypse costuming?
LARP was my first excuse to make a costume. There were some friends who had run a small LARP in the UK, very much inspired by Fallout.
Awesome.
So it's set in the same world, and it looked like fun. And they were running a second one at a disused military base in the UK. I thought, the venue looks quite good. A few of my friends were going there, so I thought, I better make a costume then. So I didn't really know what I was doing. I just threw something together, but I really enjoyed the process, and I really enjoyed the way that it worked in a similar way to how I was making stuff for Doctor Who years previous. That it was a matter of finding random pieces and repurposing them into something new. And I thought, well, that kind of really fits in with the whole post-apocalyptic thing that you're salvaging the wasteland for bits that you can repurpose.
Oh yeah.
So I immediately it kind of went, actually, I really enjoy this style of work and I enjoy this genre, because I dabbled a bit in steampunk a couple of years previous and I never really got the hang of it. It didn't really do much for me. It's like, it's all right, but it's not really inspiring me. But as soon as I started doing the post-apocalyptic stuff, I went, oh yeah, actually, this is really good. I like this. It suits the way I work. So that was my first costume.
It is interesting how like different genres will just attract us right off the bat like that. Like, I fell in love with the post-apocalypse stuff right away too, because first off, the world is kind of open-ended. And then when you look at our inspiration, Fallout, Mad Max, Waterworld, it's really interesting because tribalism is such a big thing in all these stories, and each of the tribes take on their own aesthetic. So you can kind of work almost anything into a post-apocalypse costume.
Yeah, I agree. There are so many different approaches to making something which will fit in a post-apocalyptic genre. I mean, you've got your classic Mad Max, set a lot of standards, especially in the use of like tires to make armor. Although, actually, it wasn't really Mad Max that cemented that. It was Salute of the Jugger,
right?
That I realized did the majority of the work of establishing tires as, hey, this makes good armor.
Right.
But there are so many different ways to approach it. I mean, one of my favorite recent approaches has been for the game Horizon Zero Dawn, which is post-apocalyptic, but just approaches the design work in a completely different way. And it's like, this is really gorgeous, but still obviously post-apocalyptic, but as you say, also very tribal. And I like that tribal element, and there's definitely a lot you can play with there. So yeah, it's a great genre and can be approached from loads and loads of different directions.
Yeah, and it almost looks like Horizon has like almost a prehistoric element to it, but also mechanical. It's kind of interesting.
It's a really interesting fusion. I mean, a lot of the robots in it are, there's obviously some inspired by dinosaurs, some inspired by real world creatures.
Yeah.
And then the clothing and a lot of the weapons and elements are made up of components from those felled creatures. So that there's a real, that design sort of works through from your opponents right through to the costuming on all of the tribes and all of the characters and the character you play. It all has the same aesthetic, so it all really ties in very nicely as a world view. So I mean, I collect a lot of like the art of books, like the art of Fallout 4 and the art of Mad Max and the art of Horizon Zero Dawn, because they're great reference. And I think computer games are as valid a source of reference these days as any film or TV series. I think there's some really great concepts and really great artists working on some really interesting productions.
Yeah, and video games today have, even more elaborate stories than film, because a video game will have 10 or 12 or 20 hours of playtime. And you think of like The Last of Us 2. They tell these long stories with incredible character development and so much just embedded within that.
Yeah, I mean, you say the Last of Us was a fantastic game, and I think really well told as well. A genuine emotional punch to
Right.
it, and great voice acting, a great storyline, great script. So yeah, I mean, The Last of Us is definitely something which impressed me. And oddly enough, today the casting's been released for Ellie and Joel for the HBO series which they've got planned. So
That's right. I just saw that.
yeah, Pedro Pascal, the Mandalorian, he's playing Joel, which
Perfect.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure he'll be great. I trust the casting.
Yeah.
I think they'll probably do a great job on it. But I look forward to seeing that. I look forward to seeing how that world is recreated on screen, in reality, as much as CGI is involved, as opposed to the computer game.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what technology they're going to use. Are they going to go practical and kind of set it on set and on stages, or are they going to do more like The Mandalorian, with which Pascal was also in, where they're using not green screen, but that what is it? The Unreal Engine with the backdrop, the LED screens.
Yes. What is that called? It's not the Void.
I forget what it's called. Yeah, it's something like that, though, isn't it?
The space or something. Yes. I don't know. I would imagine they will use a mixture of real world locations dressed and CGI to just expand those locations. It works the best that way, I think, is when you've got a real location which is then enhanced by CGI rather than relying on them walking through a green void and all around them.
Yeah, and I'm sure, I haven't gotten to get a real take from actors on this, but I'd imagine being on a real set definitely helps them to get into character better.
Oh, I can imagine, yeah. I think there was probably quite a soul-destroying period in Hollywood where CGI was massively overused, and actors were just basically staring at green walls and silver balls stuck on the end of sticks going, oh my God. I could be doing Shakespeare.
I know it. Yeah, and I love the Marvel superhero movies,
Me too.
but you can always tell that they're not 100% there because they're doing a lot of work on green screens.
Yeah, I think I think the first Iron Man, a lot of his suit was a practical suit, and then later in subsequent films and in the Avengers films, apparently a lot of it was just replaced digitally. So he was walking around in your standard blue suit with all the dots on it.
Right.
And I think that's a shame. I mean, I can see why, because it's probably more comfortable for the actor. But I mean, the original Iron Man suit, not the very original one, but the red and gold classic one, was a fantastic piece of engineering. To get a physical costume to move and work like that, I think it is a real tribute to practical effects and costume making. And then to have it done as CGI, you probably can't tell the difference most of the time. But really, I like things practical.
Yeah. And speaking of which, I want to get back to your costumes, because when I look at a Mark Cordory costume, especially the Salvaged Wear, they are so elaborate. They almost seem to tell their own story. You can really get a lot of background on a character, even before they're on somebody. So how do you go about designing your post-apocalypse costumes and getting so much story embedded in them?
Oh, well, thanks for the compliment. Yeah, I think a costume does need to tell a story. I mean, especially when you are dealing with something which, in theory, has a lot of history behind it, because you are basically saying that you are wearing something which has been no doubt repurposed from something else, was not built for you from scratch, but you've taken these elements, you've again salvaged these things from elsewhere in the Wasteland, repurposed them, created something new from them. But I think you need, I think a successful costume has that story behind it, that you can almost see where things have come from. That simple things like stencils on elements, which even fragments of stencils kind of tell a story that that element or that section of the costume has been taken from something else. It had a different purpose years ago, but you've taken it, you found it, you've rebuilt it, remade it, and using it for something different. And that story I think is really key to giving the whole costume a character, to giving the person who's wearing it a character, so that as they're walking around in that costume, you can kind of start telling their story or reading their story in the costume without actually having to talk to them first, and for them to go, well, actually, my backstory is this, whatever. It's nice if the story if the costume can make its own introduction to you visually before you ever actually have to talk to the person. So I think story and detail are sort of repairs. Things get damaged, things get repaired, and the more damage and repair you get, the more story you're adding to a piece of costume. So it's all about creating a false sense of history, and especially in the post-apocalypse, because everything that you're using is from history. There's virtually no, in most scenarios, there's virtually no means of producing new things, and all those elements of production have been destroyed or have fallen into ruin. So all you're left with is salvaging pre-existing items from a wasteland and reusing them. So everything has got a history, and I think if you can put that into your repairs, into your detailing, into your aging, then that's a very important element of creating a successful costume, I think.
Yeah, that's great. And I remember in my first Wasteland weekend, which was 2011, I had showed up with a costume that was kind of cobbled together. It was actually something I made for a web series before, and I was kind of reusing it. But, I had like, the T-shirt that was underneath had just random slash marks in it. And I got approached. I was actually interviewing one of the kind of old timer. He was with the Jugger group. I don't remember his name. I'm sure I could look it up. But he was like he would do like Western reenactments. He was involved in, what am I trying to say? Like Ren Fair, that kind of thing. So he had a lifetime of costuming, and his advice was that, like the damage is good, but people in a post-apocalypse would be experts at fixing their own stuff to kind of concentrate more on the repairs, be more deliberate with the distressing. I know you kind of mentioned a little bit before, but could you build on that and tell me what advice you would give to post-apocalypse cosplayers as they're making their first costumes?
Okay, well, I mean, yes, repairs, I think, as I said, they're very much a part of the story of a costume, and walking around in something which is literally fallen to bits and hanging off you in terms of practicality of surviving is not necessarily realistic. So yes, repairs would be ongoing. They would also be not everything would be aged to the same extent, because you would find you had been wearing something for like 10 years, gone through all sorts of environments and shit, and then you might find something which had just been tucked away in a warehouse and go, okay, that will repair that element which has fallen apart. So not everything has to be the same level of distressed. Although it's tempting to distress everything down to the same level, because then it looks kind of nice together.
Right.
You don't want, obviously you don't want sort of a bright, clean piece of fabric stuck on, a tattered old pair of trousers or a vest or whatever. But yeah, varying the levels of aging can help to, that's a more recent repair. That's a much more pre-existing repair, and layering those repairs. You don't just have to have one layer of repair on various parts of the costume. You can have a repair on top of a repair on top of a repair. So you're building up that texture. Although, as I found out myself, going to the Mojave for the first time, you kind of don't want to add too many layers before you go, Jesus, man, this is hot out here. Because as a Brit, we're like really not used to those Mojave desert temperatures. Right. But yeah, layering repairs upon repairs, I think is, again, that gives you the depth. I don't know. It kind of gets to a point where when you see it, you know that it works or doesn't work, and it's difficult. It's difficult for me at this point just to go, well, this is actually absolutely the way you should approach it. I've seen so many different approaches, so many different techniques, and there are so many right ways of doing it, but I don't think there is a single right way of doing it.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense, huh? Now, you mentioned going to Wasteland, and I believe the first time you went was in 2018. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and your wife came as well, right? Or did she not come till 2019?
No, she came. All credit. I love my wife, and she was amazing, because Wasteland, the first visit to Wasteland, literally came from a conversation where I was looking at a video of it and just online going, oh, that just looks awesome. God, I'd love to go there one day. And she said, well, why don't we? I went, what, seriously? But it's going to cost a fortune to get there. So, well, let's make a holiday out of it. So I went, fuck yeah. So literally it was my wife going, yeah, okay, let's go. Which I kind of hadn't expected, but she had been to like Old Town in Poland, which is another great smaller post-apocalyptic festival. But yeah, the chance, I guess, of making it into a big American road trip wrapped around it was more enticing, I guess, than just, hey, darling, we're going to hop on a plane and fly over 5,000 miles across the Atlantic and spend 5 days pretending we're in the apocalypse, when we actually do things like go to San Francisco and Las Vegas and explore a bit
that's great.
of the amazing country. I just fell in love with California, especially. So awesome. It was all thanks to my wife that we went. But wow, and we were there for 2 days. I went, can we come again next year? I said, yeah, okay.
It gets you like that.
Yeah, doesn't it?
Yeah. And you did a couple distressing workshops. One of them was like a costuming tutorial, which is the one specifically I remember you kind of taking a break and going, wow, I can't talk very long here in the desert. Oh, God, yeah. I could feel myself shriveling up like a sultana, just like the moisture getting sucked out of you. So that was when I'd been put in front of the main stage in the direct sunlight. I went, whoa, no, this is too much for me. I'm not used to. I mean, we live in Britain, and we do not get those sort of temperatures out there. So yeah, I kind of shriveled on the first year, but you carried it very well.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, and that was definitely a rough spot, because even I was there with a camera, but the audience, I mean, they were having a hard time too, and they didn't have to present. So I'm glad that they moved you to the command center, which has at least some shade for when you did the doll making workshop, which is pretty interesting. It's like these post-apocalyptic dolls, and it was like a lot of baby dolls. What Where did that come from?
Honestly, the whole creepy doll thing, I don't know. It kind of took on a life of its own after a while. But the whole thing started with one doll, which do you know what a car boot sale is?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was at a car boot sale quite a few years ago, and there was somebody selling an ugly doll. That's an ugly doll, £2. I looked at it and went, "Oh, I could do something with that. So I'll give you £1 for it." So okay, please take it. So I took it, and I ended up making a mask out of it because it was quite an ugly doll, and I thought that was quite good fun. And then somebody went, "Oh, I'll have that." And then somebody else saw that picture and went, "Oh, I'd like one like that as well, please." So I ended up making 2, and then 4, and then 8, and then just suddenly I was making loads of creepy doll stuff and figuring out different ways of using dolls. And then the Barbie dolls, I got hold of a load of those. Thought I can do something with those. And I mean, I've lost count of how many dolls I've made or how many childhood memories I've mutilated at this point. But the workshops just seem to be really popular, and they're fun to do. And I'd run a couple. Oh, excuse me. I'd run a couple in Poland at Old Town, and those were popular. And then when Jared said, do you want to run some stuff out at Wasteland? So, well, yeah, I'd do a couple of creepy doll workshops, and those got booked out like within minutes, apparently, with a waiting list on them. So they were popular, and they were fun, and they were sort of undercover, which was also good.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I never planned to be associated with mutilating dolls, and I'm not quite sure how comfortable I am with it. But I guess you take what you're given. So yeah.
Yep. Yep. And I just want to clarify a couple things you said there. Jared is one of the heads of Wasteland Weekend. He's one of the co-owners. So he's kind of the guy to go through for all these scheduling things. And then these dolls, I'm going to try to just describe them the way I see them. Okay. Everyone in these workshops brings their own doll. And then basically you kind of pop them apart in places. You literally burn the plastic. You're painting on them. You're throwing some new clothing on them. You're some people were like sticking wires through them to kind of like mutilate them a little bit more. Is it just basically like completely wreck these things as much as possible?
Well, the process that I kind of settled on for doing the workshops was that everybody bought 2 dolls. So one to work on and one to chuck into the body pile.
Oh, cool.
For everybody to pick from. And then at the start of the workshop, basically I generally say, okay, rip out an eye and take at least one limb off. And then chuck those around, swap them, pick things from, pick bits from the pile in the middle, and just start putting them, adding new limbs. Because I guess the process, the thought process behind it is that these are toys and dolls which have been made up from random fragments that have been found, whether things found in, an old house which has been burnt down. You've got a partly dismembered burnt doll that you've found in the rubble, and then maybe it's got some limbs missing and an eye missing. Later on you find a completely different doll, and that becomes something else, and you just put these random bits together. So I can't remember the phrase I used as strange toys for wasteland children, that these are sort of hideous things that only a child of the apocalypse could fall in love with. And I kind of like, there's an element of sadness about them all, that they're quite poignant. They can be quite poignant little toys that it's like, oh God, the world is so awful that this hideous lump of burnt plastic can actually give a child some comfort. So
that's great.
Yeah, but generally it's mostly adults have them and go, yeah, I love these are great.
Yeah, I don't think they're a gift for most children.
No, I don't think many children have had them,
Yeah.
but people like Wastelanders like Antivirus.
Uh-huh.
She already had her own creepy doll thing going on,
Uh-huh.
but it's nice to meet like-minded people in Wasteland Weekend who go, yeah, let's mutilate some dolls.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to you were mentioning working with smaller budgets, and I think the post-apocalypse genre is perfect for it because you are literally like scavenging these dolls and these costume pieces wherever you can find them. And I mean, sometimes it's your own closet, but this stuff can come from like thrift stores and Army Navy stores and all sorts of places where you can just collect junk.
Yeah, absolutely. As I say, the process was very close to how I was working on the first couple of seasons of Doctor Who. Is
Yeah.
that you start to gain an eye for shapes and form
Hmm.
and how those shapes and forms can fit together to create something new.
Hmm.
So when I go to a car boot sale, and we have some quite big ones around locally to me, that's when the apocalypse isn't actually happening and they're allowed to
Uh-huh.
run. But I will go to a car boot sale and there'll be maybe a couple of hundred stalls, tables laid out, and I will systematically walk down each row and scan every table
Uh-huh.
as I'm walking, looking for shapes, looking for
Oh, cool.
interesting forms or pieces or details, and go, that would work. And I think I've kind of trained myself quite well to be able to just quickly notice these things, notice
Yeah.
shapes, notice interesting pieces that I think, yeah, okay, I might not have a purpose for that right now, but I know at some point it will become useful. So I'll put it in one of my many boxes of junk, which still litter my workshop.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I was about to ask, do you have like a junk room or a garage that's full all the
Yeah,
way to the top?
that's basically my workshop. Yeah, I just have crates and crates, or like crates full of plastic elements, crates full of bits of metal, crates full of just. There are crates filled with all different things, and because of the pandemic, I haven't been able to get out to restock, so my supplies are dwindling, unfortunately,
Uh-huh.
and I'm definitely going to need to get out and find some more. But fortunately, I have so many crates filled with crap that I've survived so far.
Well, that's great. And the dwindling supply is a good sign of productivity during quarantine.
Yeah, I mean, last year started off pretty good. I had a couple of full costumes, pretty much full costume builds for Wasteland Weekend, which
Uh-huh.
unfortunately then got cancelled. And then the rest of last year kind of tailed off, and I ended up making lots of creepy dolls, but just in
Nice.
different styles. And this year has started off actually remarkably well, surprisingly well.
Oh, that's great.
So I can't say who it was for. Probably by the time this comes out, I will have been able to say who it was for. But
Uh-huh.
I've had a very interesting post-apocalyptic themed commission, which involved 3 builds, which was quite fun. That filled up January, and now I've got some more inquiries coming through
Well, that's
for
great.
February and March. So yeah, that's going to chew up more of my stock. So I really
Yep.
do need to get out there and find some more crap.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, hopefully the boot sales will be on. And by the way, for my fellow Americans and elsewhere, a boot sale or a car boot sale is very akin to our flea markets here.
Yeah.
All right, so you mentioned Old Town Festival in Poland a couple times. Can you tell me about that festival? I know it's a LARP. I think it's probably the second biggest festival in the world outside of Wasteland Weekend. Tell me what it was like, and tell me how it compares to like a desert Mad Max festival.
Old Town was it was definitely my first post-apocalyptic festival. I've been to 3 of them. They are held on an old disused Soviet military airbase of which
Oh, wow.
they have got. I mean, obviously, Second World War, a lot of Soviet occupation in Poland and
Mm-hmm.
after the war. And there are a lot of these places apparently still kicking around. And Old Town is situated on this huge old military airbase. So all the old runways are there, overgrown, cracked concrete, lots of crumbling buildings,
Yeah.
service buildings that were part of the airbase. And they've created a town on one part of the airbase, and then everything outside that town is the wasteland. So you
Mm-hmm.
have a huge area to walk out and explore into, which is great. So it really does feel like you're heading into the wasteland.
That's great.
As probably, I mean, compared to Wasteland Weekend, Old Town is quite small. I'm not sure how many people they've had, but less than 1,000. I think quite a bit less than 1,000 people.
Uh-huh.
But it's a LARP. It's airsoft based, so you're using airsoft BB guns for
Mhm.
ranged combat, but that only happens outside the town boundaries, obviously for safety reasons.
Uh-huh.
And within the town boundaries, people will come in and build entire encampments. So, the people are on site for at least a couple of weeks prior to the event. I guess in a very similar way to Wasteland Weekend, that you'll get teams of people coming in, building
Right.
encampments, building the town from the ground up again.
Uh-huh.
And it attracts people from all over the world. I mean, I've met people from Sweden, from Finland, from Australia, from America, from Russia, Germany.
Wow.
There were only a couple of us. I think we were actually the only people from the UK the times I've been there.
Uh-huh.
And it's lovely. I mean, it's a really good atmosphere. Everybody is, again, like Wasteland Weekend, really friendly, welcoming, and yeah, I love it. It's a good little festival. And in terms of how does it compare to Wasteland Weekend, I mean, obviously the budget is considerably less. I mean, Wasteland Weekend feels like you're on a set of a multi-million-dollar Hollywood movie. Old Town is obviously done more on a shoestring budget,
Uh-huh.
and it's very much more make do. But both of them have a really good apocalyptic feel to them, although they are very different events.
Yeah, and then well, Wasteland takes place in the Mojave Desert, or right on the edge of the Mojave Desert, but Old Town is going to have a very different feel. It's very green there. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. I say it's very much overgrown. That way that nature reclaims disused, sort of human constructions, the concrete and the buildings. Nature's very much re-greening all of that. So it's a different feel of an apocalypse. In the way that Wasteland is, your deserts and everything's parched and dry and desolate. Old Town is less desolate, but equally apocalyptic, just in a greener way.
That's great. And it does, just the imagery coming out of that festival, it looks like somewhere where you could actually survive. Whereas the Wasteland Desert, if it wasn't for the town of California City, that's only 15 minutes away, you couldn't survive out there for more than a week. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I say they're both their own different apocalypse, but that's the good thing about the genre, is that there's so many different apocalypses and so many different ways of approaching it, of imagining it, and it's open to a lot of creativity. And yeah, as I say, but I think both end up as basically a party at the end of the world.
Right.
Which is great. I love that whole thing. Fuck it, the world's ending.
Yeah,
let's just party.
Right. Oh, totally. and the party is an absolute blast. If you haven't been to any of these festivals and you've been thinking about going, just go. The people are amazing. They're super inviting. You don't need to show up with a tribe or with a camp or anything like that. I mean, you have to bring a camp. You need somewhere to stay, but you can just go and just enjoy the show as well.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so let's see. In early 2020, when the pandemic started and this whole world was starting to get their first stay-at-home orders, and we were all running out of toilet paper. I'm not sure if you guys had that same problem there, but we sure did. It was kind of funny.
Where this is going.
Yeah. You showed up in a meme.
Mm-hmm.
Can you describe it?
Yeah. Okay, so as you say, everything's going to shit, and toilet roll is suddenly the new gasoline. Yeah, it was kind of weird. The first notification I got was somebody tagging me on a Facebook post saying, "Mark, is this you?" I went, "Yeah, that's me." And somebody I eventually tracked down where the image had come from, but it's a photograph that I had composited together. It was me in my costume, but I'd sort of photoshopped a background of a sort of derelict wasteland behind me. And it was on my Pinterest board. I tracked it down to. And somebody had obviously been looking for a post-apocalyptic image to make a meme out of, and found that one and went, "Oh, that'll do." So they cropped it, but it's still, weirdly, they'd still left this watermark across the middle of it, which had my website address on it.
Oh, that's great.
And put, "I'm going to the store. Do you need anything?" on it. And weirdly, it just went viral. And so I got the first notification, then I got a couple more, then I got a couple more, and then I got some from elsewhere in the world. And within a few days, I was just getting notification after notification after notification. I think, fuck, this has gone a bit weird. And it just carried on like that. So yes, I'm the guy in the "I'm going to the store, do you need anything" meme.
It's so funny.
2020 hadn't been strange enough.
Yeah. And I know that you have taken advantage of this new fame and turned the image into a t-shirt, right?
Yeah, I held off for months for that because it just felt like in poor taste. But as the whole thing went on and everybody kind of got used to it, I just went, sod it. Why not? So I changed the wording slightly to the original meme was, "Do you want anything?" And I just changed it to "Do you need anything?" And I rebuilt the entire image because that was a small image, 72 dpi by, I don't know, 20 by 30. But I had all the original elements of it, so I just did a high resolution version of it and did it as a t-shirt, so it's available on TeePublic and Redbubble, and it's my most popular selling design out of all the ones I've got. I thought, well, sod it, somebody's gonna do this, why not me?
Right. I mean, it's you, so
weirdly enough, I had 3. I'm not sure whether they're all the same person using different accounts, but I had 3 people contact me via different methods going, "I can't believe you're using my design to try and make money. That's really sucks." I went,
"What?
Dude, it's literally my photograph. Look, on the original meme, you can see my website address on it." And somebody had got really upset about me deciding to make a t-shirt available. "Oh, how come you're using somebody else's design?" Dude, have you ever heard about copyright? Do you know how copyright works?
Yeah, no kidding.
So, and I never heard anything from them since, but that just kind of just added another layer of weirdness to the whole thing.
Right.
So yeah, if you want the t-shirt or greetings cards or whatever the fuck, it's on a load of different things on TeePublic and Redbubble. Strange.
Yeah.
Very, very strange period of last year.
I love it. Well, it is a fantastic design, and it is perfect for the pandemic. So if you guys need a new T-shirt, definitely find Mark's stuff on those websites. It's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know. I have a salvage shirt. I've worn it for a couple of the YouTube shows.
Oh, cool. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you for the
they're great.
advertising.
Of course, yeah, they're great designs, and your stuff on Salvaged Wear, is all the stuff that's on that page up for sale, or do you have like how do people purchase Salvaged Wear?
Do you mean on my website?
Yeah, that's right.
Virtually everything on my website is stuff which has been made to commission. Most 99% of what I make is made to commission, to an extent that I don't really have time to build stock. So I don't have, on my website, I don't really have a shop, except it's got the links to TeePublic and Redbubble. So no, everything that you see on my website has already been purchased, but I'm always happy, and I'm quite often getting inquiries like, oh, I saw this, how much for something like that? So that's generally the process that I work through now, rather than having stock of going, I've made this item, do you want to buy it? It's people will come to me and go, I would like an item like this.
Oh, great.
I will make it.
Okay, so so your website's more of like an inspiration board. Here's some stuff. Well, it's a portfolio.
It is. It's exactly what it is. It's a portfolio of stuff I have made. But if you want something similar to this, or you've got your own ideas, then this is how I make stuff. This is my style. So yeah, it's a portfolio rather than a shop.
And then I'm sure like pricing is based on the conversation you have with that person. How much do you want to spend, and here's what I can do for that kind of deal.
Yeah, I have two rates depending on whether it is for personal use or whether it's for commercial use. If it's for commercial use, then I have a daily rate, which reflects a more professional commercial rate. But if I was going to try and charge that rate for personal use, nobody would ever buy any stuff from me. So I had to work out two different rates, because if I charged a non-commercial rate for commercial work, I'd be massively underselling myself.
Of course.
Whereas if I charge commercial rate for personal use, then, as I said, nobody would go, oh, fuck that, I'm not buying that. That's hugely expensive. So two rates. Daily rate, and it usually works on a daily rate plus materials.
Got it.
That's how I cost an item up.
Okay. Well, we're definitely going to continue this conversation off air, because it's been a dream of mine for the last few years to have a Mark Cordory costume. Because again, I am not a costumer, and I look at these things, I'm just like, yes, that's what Makeshift needs to wear. Oddly
enough, I know somebody who can help you.
Awesome. Who is it?
Just a guy I know.
Oh, good. Perfect. Awesome. So now what's the future for Mark Cordory Creations?
I'm just going to carry on making shit until I fall apart, really. I mean, as an artist, it's weird times ahead anyway with the pandemic, and obviously what's happening in the UK in terms of trade is not exactly filling a lot of crafters like myself with hope and joy at the future of being able to trade internationally. But I'm just going to carry on doing what I'm doing, and I will take commissions from anywhere in the world, from anyone. I've got commercial commissions and private commissions, inquiries coming through fairly regularly. And as long as I can carry on making stuff, I will, because it's what I enjoy. And as I said at the beginning, it's pretty much the only thing I'm any good at. I've got no grand schemes. There's no like, I've got this fantastic plan ahead of me to become an international online influencer of epic proportions and do workshops and stuff like that. I'm just a guy with a small workshop making stuff for whoever wants it, and that's what I've been doing for 37 years, and what I'm quite happy to carry on doing.
Fantastic. Well, I got to say, your work is absolutely amazing, And I've had such a good time just talking to you about all the things you've done, because you've got some amazing projects in your past, and with Salvaged Wear. I'm just in awe every time I go through the portfolio. It's just absolutely amazing.
Oh, cheers. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's very kind.
Yeah, of course. Okay, survivors. Well, make sure to check out Mark's work, including all of his professional Wasteland costumes, which is called Salvaged Wear. And you can reach all that at markcordory.com. That's MarkCordory.com. And you've also got a YouTube channel with some tutorials on there. I'm going to link that in the show notes. There's just a handful there. And I've also got Mark's tutorial from 2018. Well, some of it, most of it anyway, on the Apocalypse Post. So I'll link that in the show notes below. And I think that's about it. Mark, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. I've really enjoyed this, and thank you for inviting me along. Absolutely.
And we'll have you back again, probably leading up to Wasteland, to maybe help people with some like last minute costume tips, maybe?
Oh, I'll be more than happy to. That would be great. Yes.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Cool. All right. Well, that's it for this episode, survivors. Stay alive. Hey, survivors. Makeshift here to remind you that the Apocalypse Post is brought to you in no small way by our Patreon supporters. Join the ranks for early access and exclusive content, with support levels now named for fancy Fallout-ridden factions like the $2 per creation Drifter or the $7 Wastelander. Knowing you've got my back has helped me dedicate more time to this channel, spreading love of the post-apocalypse, and less time on stupid real-world stuff. Sign up right now at patreon.com/theapocalypsepost.